Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show where we talk about all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we're going to be talking about the second batch of Dominaria United Commander spoilers. Now without further ado, let's get started. And we're starting with Ayesha Tanaka, Armorer. For 3 colorless, 1 white, and 1 blue, we have a legendary creature, Human Artificer, 2/4. When she attacks, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may put any number of artifact cards with mana value less than or equal to Ayesha's power from among them onto the battlefield tapped. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Ayesha can't be blocked as long as defending player controls 3 or more artifacts. So you're obviously going to want to pump her a little bit so that you can hit more stuff, because you're only looking at 4 cards. This seems like it's going to be okay. You're going to be able to put 1 or 2 cards on average if the deck is built correctly. And the second ability is actually pretty good because it makes her into this kind of Voltron commander. Seeing as most players have 3 or more artifacts in play, it's going to be difficult to block her. That seems kind of interesting to me. You could also use stuff like liquid metal coating and liquid metal torque to make their stuff into artifacts and make her unblockable. So she could be a really scary Voltron commander, and actually I'm kind of excited to build around her, which is surprising because I don't usually like blue-white commanders. Next up we have Bladewing Deathless Tyrant. For 5 colorless, 1 black and 1 red, he's a 6/6 with flying and haste. Whenever Bladewing Deathless Tyrant deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, for each creature card in your graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie knight creature token with menace. This is sweet. You're gonna get so many creatures if you connect with this. The fact that it has haste means you get them immediately as well. So obviously you want to fill up your graveyard, you want to mail stuff, you want to get stuff into your graveyard. Maybe rummaging will be good because it's in red. The fact that it does it on hitting planeswalkers is obviously there because a lot of the commanders in this set are planeswalkers too. I don't know, this just seems really Timmy and really fun to me. You're just going to get so many zombies, and the fact that they have menace means that they're not that irrelevant either. They have to be blocked by 2 creatures. I really like this one. Next up is Dric's Soulkindler. For 2 colorless, 1 red and 1 white. The legend rule doesn't apply to tokens you control. Whenever another non-token legendary permanent enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, create a token that's a copy of it. The token gains haste and you sacrifice it at the end of the next end step, and Dric is a 4/3. So this is kind of a unique one. Again, this is a bit more interesting for me than some of the other Boros commanders that we've seen, because you're kind of playing around with something that we haven't really seen in Boros. It's pretty sweet that you can make copies of the legendaries and then you can use them for value, because it's at the end of the next end step. You can sacrifice them before that to get extra value. You can do all sorts of shenanigans. This is much better. This is exactly what they should be doing with Boros. Next up is Falaji Wayfarer. For 2 colorless and 1 green. It's a creature, human scout, a 2/4, and Falaji Wayfarer is all colors. This ability doesn't affect its color identity. And multicolored spells you cast have Convoke. That's pretty cool. So she can tap to make any of your multicolored cards 1 cheaper. I think it's a bit weird and it's a bit like forced that they've made her into 5 colors just so she can fit into that 5-color Matters deck. Still, it's a good card in decks that want to be playing multicolored stuff and decks that care about multicolored. I can see this being very good. Gerards Hourglass Pendant. For 1 colorless, it's a legendary artifact with flash. If a player would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. Love to see that, especially when with flash on it. This is going to be kind of relevant in stopping all sorts of combos, because they're not going to see you keeping it up. You can just flash it in response to their extra turn spell, and they're going to be pretty sad, and I love to see that because I hate people who just take extra turn after extra turn. You can exile it for paying 4 and tapping it, and then you return to the battlefield tapped all artifact, creature, enchantment, and land cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. So it's actually a really, really good card. This can slot into so many different decks. It protects against board wipes, or it protects against extra turns, and it can actually do both. If you stop an extra turn and then keep it around, waiting for somebody to wipe the board, then they can't really wipe the board until they remove this. This is a really, really good card. and I'm going to be putting it in a lot of decks. It's probably going to go straight into my Yoshimaru deck because it's a 1 mana legendary card, which is perfect for that, and it also gives my board protection. I love this card, it's going to be great. Next up we have Origin Maelstrom, a WooBurg card, so all 5 colors. It's a sorcery and it's destroy each creature that isn't all colors. Okay, they're really pushing that theme here. I mean, this is fine. It's going to get a lot of your stuff too, because it's very difficult to have a deck full of 5 color creatures. You can have a fully multicolored deck, shout out to Alara Reborn, but you're going to have a lot of trouble making all of your creatures 5 colors. So it's not going to be quite a one-sided board wipe, but it should be better for you than for other players. Next up we have Jensen, Carthalion, Druid Exile for 1 green and 1 white. It's a 2/2. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, scry 1. If that spell was all colors, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance. This is a good payoff for that 5 color deck. Then you can pay 5 and tap it to add WooBurg, so it filters and gives you all of your colors. This is a sweet card. Scrying is nice, it lets you find better stuff, and most of the time you're going to be getting angels in that deck, so this is a very solid card. It could even be its own commander and have a really fun deck based around it. Next up we have Mana Cannons for 2 colorless and 1 red. It's an enchantment. Whenever you cast a multicolor spell, Mana Cannons deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of colors that spell is. This seems rather good. Actually, you're probably going to be having 3 color spells or above in these decks, so whenever one of your spells has a lightning bolt attached to it, that makes them pretty good. It's going to let you control the board quite well. I can see this being very good in Ramos Dragon Engine, which plays a lot of charms and 3 color cards. This is just a really solid card all around. Next up is Moira Urborg Haunt for 2 colorless and 1 black. It's a 3/2 menace. Whenever Moira Urborg Haunt deals combat damage to a player, return to the battlefield target creature card in your graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. So it's a kind of a weird one. She needs to deal combat damage to a player, and you can only bring your own creatures back that you've sacrificed basically, or that have been blocked. You could play her fair, but you probably want to be sacrificing big stuff. However, you can't really cheat on the cost initially. You're probably going to have to put it into play normally unless you're playing a reanimated deck. Just a bit clunky, I feel, but we'll see how it plays out. Obsidian Obelisk for 2 colorless. It's an artifact. It enters tapped. You can tap to add 1 colorless, or you can add 1 mana of any color and spend it only to cast a multicolored spell. I like this design because obviously we have a lot of very good 2 mana rocks, and we don't want to make them so good that other options such as 3 mana rocks are no longer viable. I think this one toes the line pretty well. If the second ability didn't have the restriction of being only multicolored spells, this would clearly be too good. It would just go in every deck. So the fact that it comes in tapped and has that rider makes it weak enough that it'll only go in dedicated decks, and I like that. Hobby Caleria is a 1 colorless, 1 green and 1 white, 1/3 legendary creature elf archer with reach. You untap all archers you control during each player's untap step. Loving this already. Whenever an archer you control deals damage to a creature, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. Sweet, sweet. This is exactly what I want. Green-white, as well as Boros, is one of those colors where most of the commanders feel pretty boring and samey. So having a kind of special commander like this that is based around archers and clearly like tapping abilities, I think it's actually really cool, because if you find a way to turn your creatures into archers, you can do pretty cool stuff as well. You're basically getting Seedborn Muse effect, which is really strong. If you find archers that can tap for mana, then you're also being able to use that mana to then pay to draw a card whenever your archers ping some of the opponent creatures. I don't know, I just think this is a really fun build around, and if I ever make a Selesnya deck, this will probably be one of the commanders I'll look at. Love it. Next up we have Orca Siege Demon for 5 colorless, 1 black and 1 red. It's a legendary creature demon. It has trample, and whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Orca Siege Demon. Whenever Orca dies, it deals damage equal to its power divided as you choose among any number of targets. So this is a strong card. It does cost 7 mana though, so it's going to come down pretty slow. However, the first ability triggers on any creature dying, including yours or your opponent's, and if they don't deal with it, it's going to deal a bunch of damage. And actually, even if they deal with it, they have to exile it and hope you don't have a way to sack in response, which you should be running in this deck. So you're going to be able to ping for a lot. You can just go to somebody's face. You can use stuff like gratuitous violence to double the damage that you deal. I think this is a really, really good card. Primeval Spawn is 5 colorless, 1 white, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 red, 1 green. It's a 10/10. If it would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, or no mana was spent to cast it, exile it instead. This is done to stop blinking and reanimating. It has Vigilance, Trample, and Lifelink. And when it leaves the battlefield, exile the top 10 cards of your library. You may cast any number of spells with total mana value 10 or less from amongst them without paying the mana costs. That is a pretty fun card, I suppose. It has to hit very specific stuff, but still, yeah, that's a lot of value when it leaves the battlefield. However, is it worth paying 10 mana and 5 colors for that? Probably. I guess if they remove it instantly, you're still replacing the mana you've paid, hopefully. But it might be a bit awkward sometimes if you hit like a 5-drop and a 6-drop or something. Like, you could very possibly whiff on this and end up only getting like 4 or 5 mana worth, at which point it's not that great. It's a super Timmy card though. I mean, I love to see it, but we'll have to see how well it plays out. Next up is Rasputin the Oneiromancer for 1 colorless, 1 white, and 1 blue. It's a 4/1 legendary creature, human wizard. When he enters the battlefield, put a dream counter on it for each opponent you have. Each opponent creates a 1/1 red goblin creature token. Okay, bit awkward that you're giving them free tokens just for getting dream counters, which doesn't seem that good. You have to remove 1 or more dream counters from Rasputin to add that much colorless. This is a throwback to his old card. Or you can remove a dream counter from Rasputin to create a 2/2 white knight creature token with protection from red. I don't know, this just seems a bit iffy to me. He can tap for a lot of mana, but he has 1 toughness, which means he's going to die to all those goblin tokens that you just gave your opponents. Just seems a little bit on the weaker side. It's a super cool card and he's a super cool character, but I feel the card could be a little bit stronger. Shanid, Sleeper's Scourge. 1 colorless, 1 red, 1 white, 1 black. Legendary creature, human knight, 2/4. Menace. Other legendary creatures you control have Menace. Whenever you play a legendary land or cast a legendary spell, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Wow, that is a strong effect. For a 4 mana card, which can come down pretty early, all of those legendary lands you're playing are drawing you a card and losing 1 life. That seems really good with Soulkindler, with Takenuma, and all those like legendary lands from Kamigawa and from other sets. It's just very strong, this ability, and that's without getting into the fact that casting any legendary spell is also going to draw you a card and lose you 1 life. It's going to be really hard to keep up with this deck. You have to remove this on site basically every time, or you're just going to get buried in card advantage. This seems really, really strong. Tetsuo, Imperial Champion. 1 blue, 1 black, 1 red. Whenever Tetsuo Imperial Champion attacks, if it's equipped, choose 1. It deals damage equal to the highest mana value among equipment attached to it to any target, or you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to the highest mana value among equipment attached to Tetsuo without paying its mana cost. So you're probably going to have to run fairly expensive equipment in this deck, but you don't have any of the white cards that let you cheat on equip costs, so it's a little bit awkward. It's a very cool effect, but you're only getting it once each turn, and the first part where you're dealing damage to any target is just not that great. Dealing 5 damage once per turn cycle when you attack, assuming it's 5, might even be less. Casting an instant or sorcery for free seems a lot better, but I just feel a little bit underwhelmed by that. Too much stuff needs to go right, I feel, for this to be good. Next up we have the Lady of Atauria, 3 colorless, red, green, a legendary creature, avatar, 5/5. You may tap 3 dwarves rather than pay its mana cost. That's interesting. Hopefully we get a lot more dwarves on this set, by the way, because I feel there's a lot of cool dwarf synergy cards, and stuff like Magda could really use some help. At the beginning of each end step, if a land you control was put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put any number of dwarf cards from amongst them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, this could be good as long as I said, we get a bunch of dwarf cards in this set, because for the time being, there's just not that many dwarves in Magic's history, so these decks are going to suffer because of that. But if that changes and we get a bunch of new dwarves, then this could be a really cool commander. The Peregrine Dynamo for 3 colorless. It's a legendary artifact creature. It's a 1/5. Has haste and one colorless tap, copy target activated or triggered ability you control from another legendary creature. That's not a commander. It's weird that it has the that's not a commander rider. This is fine. Probably lots of cool shenanigans you can do with this. I'm sure it'll be fun to play. The Reaver Cleaver. For 2 colorless and 1 red, it's a legendary equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, create that many treasure tokens. That is a strong ability. Again, we're going to be able to get a bunch of treasure tokens on impact, and that should be pretty sweet. It might also go into my Yoshimura deck because Yoshimura gets really big, and having 20 treasure tokens with this just kind of wins you the game, basically. Tiller Engine is 2 colorless. It's an artifact creature, 1/3. Whenever a land enters the battlefield tapped and under your control, choose one, untap that land, or tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls. This is fine. I guess it's very niche. It goes into stuff like the gate deck because you get to untap all of your gates. Most decks don't run that many tap lands for good reason because they kind of slow down your mana base a lot. So I think outside of that gate deck, it's probably not worth warping your mana base just to play this because you're not guaranteed to have it. Unless there's something that hasn't been spoiled yet that works really well with this. I don't really see it. Next up we have Tobias, Conqueror of Bad Luck. For 2 colorless, 1 white and 1 blue. He's a legendary creature with flash. When he dies, create a black 2/2 zombie creature token for each non-token creature you control that died this turn. This is fine. It's just an anti-board wipe thing. But seeing as it's a commander, everybody knows that it's coming. It's good, I suppose, and it kind of makes people play differently because they know you have it and you know you always have access to it, but they can just wait till you don't have enough mana up to use it or find another way to remove it with Swords to Plowshares or something like that. This just doesn't seem that great to me, and the payoff is just getting 2/2 zombies. Torsten, Founder of Benalia, 5 colorless, 1 green and 1 white, legendary creature, 7/7 human soldier. When he enters the battlefield, reveal the top 7 cards of your library, put any number of creature and or land cards from among them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. When Torsten dies, create 7 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. If you build your deck correctly, this is 7 mana, draw 7 cards on enter the battlefield. That is absolutely bonkers. Even if you add in some instants and some sorcery, some enchantments, some artifacts, you're still probably drawing like 4 cards on average with this or something ridiculous like that. This is just a really, really strong effect. And it doesn't have the rider against blinking, so you can blink it with Teleportation Circle, you can blink it with Conjurer's Closet, with other effects like that, Restoration Angel. This is gonna draw so many cards. 7 mana is usually a lot, but you're in green, white, and you're gonna be able to get to 7 mana. So, I don't know, this just seems very strong and a lot of inevitability. Once you start getting this going, how are people supposed to keep up with that amount of card advantage? 2-headed hellcat, 1 colorless, white, blue, black, red, green. Creature, dragon, it's a 5/5, flying, menace, haste, because it has 2 heads, so it's got menace, obviously. Whenever 2-headed hellcat attacks, draw 2 cards. It's just very strong. I mean, in the 5-color deck, you draw in 2 cards every attack. It's going to be difficult to block and kill. Just a good card. Unite the Coalition. 2 colorless, white, blue, black, red, green. Bit of a throwback to Coalition Victory in the art as well. It's kind of cool. Choose 5. You may choose the same mode more than once. Target permanent phases out. That's good because it's an instant. You can use it for protection. You can phase out up to 5 things. Target player draws a card. You could draw up to 5 cards. That's very good. Exile target player's graveyard. The most niche one, but it's still relevant in a lot of situations. Unite the Coalition deals 2 damage to any target. That's probably one of the weaker modes because it's not really worth doing it even if you do it 5 times. And destroy target artifact or enchantment. It's probably one of the stronger ones. So the flexibility this gives you is great. For 7 mana you can just do so many different things. I just really like this card in terms of flexibility. The power level's not super high because a couple of the mods are maybe not as strong as they could be. But this just covers all your bases so well. It basically does almost everything you want except for counter spells. So yeah, I really like this. I think this is a really strong card. Barrack, Warped Sangia. 1 colorless, 1 white, 1 black. 2/2, flying, death touch, lifelink. Whenever you activate an ability that isn't a mana ability, if life was paid to activate it, you may pay that much life again. If you do copy that ability, you may choose new targets for the copy. This is really fun. So you could do this with, I was going to say necropotence, but obviously there's no need to do it with necropotence. But you could do this with all sorts of powerful abilities that involve paying life, and you could just get so much value out of this because you're getting to copy all of them. It's particularly good because you don't have to pay the mana cost for the second time. So if it's an ability that costs mana and life, the second time you're just paying life, which makes it a lot stronger. This is a very unique commander, and I like that this will probably launch a new style of deck, so love to see it. Zyra, the Golden Sting. 1 colorless, 1 black, 1 red, 1 green. Legendary creature, insect assassin, 3/3. I love the art on this. She's just a bee, basically. Flying and haste. Whenever she attacks, put an egg counter on another target creature without an egg counter on it. Then when that creature dies, if it has an egg counter on it, draw a card and create a 1/1 black insect creature token with flying. This is super weird that you're putting egg counters on stuff. But it seems really good. You get to draw a card and get an insect for each time a creature with an egg counter on it dies. But you have to attack to do it, so it's kind of slow. It's kind of memey. It's not the strongest, but it seems pretty fun. And the last card for today is Zerium Golden Winged. 3 colorless and 1 white for a legendary creature, Griffin, 3/4 flying. Whenever a Griffin you control deals combat damage to a player, create a 2/2 white Griffin creature token with flying. So a commander for Griffin decks. I'm sure there's people out there who have been dreaming for this for years, and there you go, you finally got it. So that's all we've got time for today. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you have any comments, be sure to let me know in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, click like or subscribe. And until next time, take care.